So you remember Pleasure Island? You
No.
don't remember, you watched Pinocchio, you don't remember Pleasure Island.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
honestly.
right, so Pinocchio's the little wooden boy and he wants to be a real boy. And he's walking down the road with some other lad, and this fox, the slimy character, comes up to him. He's like, "Oh, have you heard of Pleasure Island? We're going there. You want to come?" And he's like, "Pleasure Island." And he's a young, naive boy. And we are all that at one point in lives. We're all these young, silly, naive boys. We're ignorant. We don't know about the world. And we incline, like my daughter, for example, she's like, give me ice cream, give me ice cream. She just wants, if she could, she'd just live off ice cream and sweets. And to her, that's like the best thing ever. And if someone came along to her and said, would you like to live off ice cream and sweets? She'd just jump straight on that. She'd say, yeah. And like when I tried to get in the way of that and stop that, I said, no, 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 come on, you got to eat healthy food if you want to grow up to be like a healthy human being without black teeth. Like, you've got to sometimes do things that you don't like and restrain from things that you do like. It's just, but at that early stage in life, it's hard to see that. And this man or these men are taking advantage of that naivety in these young people and inviting them to this place called Pleasure Island, which, as you can probably tell from the name, is just this place filled with pleasure. Like they get to live hedonistically, they can do what they want. And it's just like a huge fun ground. So they get to drink, they get to smoke, they get to break things, they can play pool, they can do all of these things, and there's no one telling them not to do it. So there's vandalism and fights and fires and like everything, whatever they want, they get to do. And they think it's a good thing. They think it's a good thing. But then what happens is slowly they start to turn into donkeys. Are you familiar? Is it striking a memory at all, or can you still not remember? Was it that long ago? So they literally turn into donkeys, and it works really well as an analogy to life, because that is what happens, and that's certainly what happened to me and what I saw happening to people all around me, and still happening to today. In that we are told, we're sold this story about the Western ideals about liberalism, freedom, like do what makes you quote unquote happy. But there's not much discussion about the distinction between what happiness or true happiness is, or being content, living a fulfilled life, with just pleasure seeking. As a kid, these things aren't explained to you, and you just sort of see them as the same thing. A happy life is one filled with pleasure. But then you engage in these things which cause pleasure, and you keep doing it to the point where the effects diminish, where they become like there is no feeling anymore. There is no pleasure. Like for anyone who's drank, the first drink always gets you wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Like my family are all Scottish, and so I think first time I got drunk was in 2000. So I'd have been maybe even younger than that. But I remember the first memory of properly getting drunk was the millennium. And we
Mm-hmm.
were in Scotland, everyone was celebrating it, and they gave me a Budweiser. And me and my brother were running around, and we were off our head on a couple of Budweiser. And that was just one. And then as you get older and you sort of acclimatize to it, you need more and you need more and you need more. There's a guy I know now, he's in his 60s. He'll go out and he'll drink something like 18 pints, and he's not unconscious. It just doesn't make any sense. But he's been drinking so long that his tolerance has increased to the point where he needs more of it. And it's the same with everything.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. You wanted to say something?
No, I was gonna say it's like psychologically, you just want to recreate that first high or that first
Yeah,
buzz.
yeah, 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 yeah. And you keep chasing it.
Mhm.
Like with heroin as well, it's they say that it's called, you're just chasing the first experience.
Mhm.
And it's like for heroin in particular, they describe it as like being kissed by God. However, but they just, for them it's such an experience that they can't explain it without having to refer to the best thing they can imagine. And then every attempt to get there always fails, and they always require more and more and more and more in order to get that first thing. And it's the same with things like chasing women. Like that first experience of being with a girl, it's exciting, it's this, it's that. But then, like a lot of the time, especially with young men in the West, this ideal of women is generally shaped by heavy pornography use from a very early age. Like we were exposed to pornographic magazines from in primary school. So I'd have been maybe even like 9 at the time. And then the internet comes in, and this is, as a young man, you've got all of these chemicals pumping through you. You know, you start to hit puberty, and then you just have like unlimited access to the internet. The generation that is looking after us is clueless about what on earth is going on the internet. Like, it's new to everyone, so they don't know what's happening, and we've just got this access to it, and it's developing in a particular culture within the youth, where like, and the parents just had no idea about it. Why? Because it's an embarrassing thing to talk to your parents about. You're just not, you know, like, as if anyone's going to be telling a man about the things that they've been looking at on the internet. But it develops this strange little culture. It develops how you see women, and what you end up doing is women become a game. And like, obviously, depending on who you are, like, you have maybe the ones that weren't necessarily able to even talk to women, and you get the development of this sort of incel, quote unquote, culture, which is the people that just sort of talk on the internet about how they wish they could get women, and generally, again, it's sort of talked about in a particular manner. Or you get the people who, you know, are at least a little bit confident enough to be able to do that, to seek women and at least be somewhat successful with them. And what you find is that it never really lives up to the expectations. It's never quite like that first experience. And, you know, the lust is there to begin with, but it dies down, it fades out. And, you know, they confuse this feeling of lust, of this ecstasy, this excitement, with love. And they'll refer to it as love. Oh, I'm in love with this girl. Oh, she's amazing. And then what they're describing is basically just really, really desiring someone. That isn't love. That's wanting what you don't have.
Yeah.
But then the problem with that is when you have it, it loses its effect. And, you know, that's not love. That's something completely different. It's like, you know, the aftershave. If you ever walk past someone, I use the same examples a lot. So anyone who's sort of familiar with me on YouTube's gonna have heard this a lot anyway. But when you walk past someone and they've got an aftershave you've not smelt before, but it's like, that's banging, that I want it. What? And you had to ask them, like, what are you wearing? And you love it, and then you get it and you wear it and you're like, yeah, I smell sick. And then after a bit of time, like, you can't smell it anymore, and it gets annoying. And you're like, I've just sprayed some on. So you know, after wearing it for a while, you have to like pretty much swim in it. But you can't smell it. It just doesn't have the effect. So you either have to what? Go to a new aftershave, or keep putting more and more aftershave on. Generally, you'll maybe switch it up and you'll try a new smell. And, you know, with youth, where I came from, and I don't know what it's probably very much the same everywhere in the West with young men. This is just, you know, if you have the ability to drift from woman to woman, then generally that happens. It's very, very, very rare you see long-lasting relationships in youth.
Yeah.
You don't see that. You see short, you know, up, down relationships where it's like super, super high. They sort of make gods out of each other. They idolize each other. They see each other as perfect. And then they make this ideal of each other so high that neither is destined to fail, because neither can live up to this sort of perfect character that's been made of them. They all have flaws. You know, they fart, they stink sometimes. Maybe they get nervous and sweaty. Maybe they, you know, say something strange, or they make a mistake. And then, like, when any of these flaws sort of appear, this image, especially with young people, you know, I'm talking about teenagers here, that image just shatters. And it goes from like, oh, they're the perfect person, to poof, the worst person ever, the enemies. It's, you know, like, it's rare you see like a chilled breakup where someone's not like completely distraught. Yeah, subhanAllah. Sorry, I go on rambles. Feel free to
No,
cut
don't
me
worry,
short.
bro. It was all.
Bro, I could hear you talk all day. MashaAllah.
MashaAllah. SubhanAllah. Nowadays, we romanticize the idea of romance, right?
Yeah.
We romanticize the idea of being with someone in a, like you mentioned, like you described, like in this perfect sense. And we set up these I think the best way I could summarize it personally is having no expectations of yourself, but insane expectations of the other. And now you have two people who expect so much from the other, but have no expectations or standards for themselves.
Yeah.
That something like that, obviously, as you said, is bound to fail. And